So here are the top 5 mistakes that James Gunn needs to avoid for his DCU after the total bad mismanagement of the DCEU. So here we go. Number 1, introducing too much too fast. One of the biggest problems with the Snyderverse was the speed at which its storytelling came. After Man of Steel, the basic groundwork laid down the basic groundwork for the DCEU. Warner Brothers raced to catch up to the MCU. This led to a brand of world building that felt like drinking out of a fire hose at times. The focus was no longer on setting the stage for the story, but rather on getting to that story being a Justice League team-up as fast as possible. The best thing James Gunn's DC reboot can do is take its time, slowly laying the seeds for the greater world with no rush for some epic team-up a la Avengers, Avengers Endgame, Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Age of Ultron, Civil War, so forth and so on. Major successes on the other sides of the comic book movie fans in the MCU have worked because Marvel Studios President Kevin Feige and co. carefully laid the cobblestone in front of them before trying to drive on the road that they were building. And you see it how it worked, just with exponentially successful gains and rewards. The reason Avengers Endgame was such a massive hit was because of the more than a decade of connective tissues the franchises had built. While fans want to see major DC events like Crisis on Infinite Earths, I don't want to see that shit, on the big screen eventually, there is no need to rush to get to those moments. Instead, the best thing James Gunn and Peter Safran can do is make sure that they have a strong foundation before anything else. And hopefully James Gunn knows this, and I think he does because he's a very smart man, or at least I'm hoping he is. Number 2, not having a concrete plan. Coming hand in hand with the too much too fast point is having a concrete plan for the DCU. While the Snyderverse may have had a plan under the tutelage of director Zack Snyder at one point or another, that was quickly abandoned by the higher-ups at Warner Brothers. The studio opted to build on the fly following the Justice League debacle that saw Snyder leaving the project mid-shoot. Already, it seems like James Gunn had a concrete plan of where he wants to take the DCU. The DC head honcho has been clear he and a few others will serve as a timeline keepers for this purpose. However, it will be the job of Warner Brothers, David Zaslav, to let Gunn and Safran execute this vision and see it through. And I'm hoping that's the case with Superman Legacy, because let's say Superman Legacy doesn't flop, is a success, but it doesn't make $1 billion and it doesn't have a $200 million opening weekend. That's the job of David Zaslav to be like, okay, it still did well. It didn't hit the numbers that I wanted it to. But again, we are in the building process because we have to gain back the trust and love and care of the general audience. Die-hard comic book fans like myself, we don't matter. We don't make up the box office. We are a very, very small portion of that box office. General audiences. The reason why these movies make $1 billion and more is because of your mom, your sister, your friends, her aunties, her grandmamas. They're the ones paying for this shit. We are, and we will always be, a small minority. And that's why you have these fucking retards on Twitter saying, we're all the DC fans, huh? We don't matter. We're not big enough for these movies to make $1 billion. It doesn't matter. You can take the entire community of comic book fans to these movies, and these movies would fucking fail every single time because we, like Batman says, are not enough. Also, yes, there are plenty of examples of massive slates being announced only to never see the light of day. Just look at the original DCU slate announcement. But Gunn seems committed to not announcing things unless he feels confident that they will happen. I like that, and James Gunn also needs to keep his mouth shut at times. But, that's a whole another story. Number 3, avoiding the weirdness of DC. Something the DCEU only dabbled in with films like Aquaman and Shazam, but never fully embraced is the absolutely bonkers nature of some of the DC universe. Arguably, even more than the world of Marvel Comics, DC can get weird, and its on-screen universe should get into that. Gunn's reimagined DC world should broaden those horizons beyond just, beyond just the traditional. My pubic hair stuck in my throat from eating my girl's cat. From the beyond the girl. Oh my God, I'm fucking retarded here. Jesus Christ. Let me start this one more time. And I know I'm not going to edit this shit out. Gunn's reimagined DC world should broaden those horizons beyond just the traditional Justice League headliners and dive into the cosmic, mythological, and mystical. This apprehension toward embracing the weird is something that Gunn already seems primed to get over. His first set of DC projects include stories at street level with the Batman Brave and the Bold and those of the Intergalactic with Lanterns. And for those that are still skeptical, Gunn already announced the franchise's first dip into the dark world and horror world of the DC occult with James Mangold's Swamp Thing as well, which I am very, very much looking forward to. Now, number 4. This is a big one. Holding back directors. Yes, one of the biggest complaints fans have had with the Snyderverse of Warner Brothers WB is holding back or impeding the vision of directors. Even through mileage may have varied when it comes to the quality of some of those visions, in several cases, WB stepped in mid-production, Frankensteining films into something they were never meant to be. Titles like The Suicide Squad, Justice League, The Flash, and Aquaman 2, which is still set to release, all suffered from studio meddling during the production or, in some cases, post-production processes. What Gunn needs to do with his renewed vision for the franchise is advise as best as he can, set the teams up for success, and then let them craft their vision within the confines of the greater universe. Without creative freedom like this, the world would have never gotten certified classics of the genre like The Dark Knight or Guardians of the Galaxy, which funnily enough was directed by James Gunn and is one of my favorite MCU movies. This likely would not be as much of an issue for Gunn as he has been on the other side working within the confines of a large IP with major studios before and knows how it can feel to have a creative vision meddled with. Again, which is why I think James Gunn is perfect for this job. So we just have to see how Superman Legacy and how his vision for DCU works out with other creators and other writers and other directors. So, number 5. Not focusing on standalone stories. In concert with every one of the points above is focusing on good standalone stories first and foremost. This is one of the most prevalent mistakes of not just the Snyderverse era DCEU, but modern comic book movie making as a whole. Instead of crafting excellent superhero stories that stand on their own with just seeds of world building, comic book movies have, in some cases, become overstuffed commercials for what is next in this particular universe rather than making what is happening now and feel meaningful. That is not to say that there should be no mention of greater universe. It is that interconnection narrative sinew that makes these cinematic universes special. But the greater universe should not just be justification for mediocre stories being told just because it will all supposedly pay off in some event movie down the line, like, 10 or 15 years from now. Thus far, Gunn looks to have his covered. All of the comic book inspirations Gunn has revealed for his DC plans operate as solid standalone stories that also happen to take place in the greater DC universe. Part of the reason Snyderverse films like Shazam, Wonder Woman, and Man of Steel succeeded in that is that they are first and foremost solid stories on their own. Where some of the other DC films failed was prioritizing universe building rather than make a great satisfying narrative in the present, and the Gunn Safran DC reboot would be smart to avoid this issue, and I think they will. I think James Gunn and Peter Safran understand what they have in front of them. I think they understand the immense pressure that they are under in delivering not only great DC movies, not only great movies in general, but just a cohesive cinematic universe that DC fans have been begging for and dying for and just want a great cohesive universe with everything firing in all cylinders, whether it's the story, the actors, the writers, the creators behind the scenes. We just want great DC movies. That's it. That's all we want. I don't think that's too much to ask. And hopefully James Gunn can deliver something that's really special, but stands apart from everything else that Marvel's doing right now. And right now, Marvel is on the ropes. So there is no bigger opportunity for James Gunn to come in and knock that bitch out. So we just have to wait and see how that happens. So that's going to be it. Make sure you guys hit the like button, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, TikTok. This is Ash Let me know in the comments down below. What do you think? Are these, what do you think of the top 5 mistakes that James Gunn should avoid for his DCU? I think it's a solid list. And I think James Gunn and Peter Safran and David Zaslav are aware that, you know, they can't make the same mistakes. Otherwise, this shit will be fucking over before it even began. So, love you all. Stay safe. Truth. Out.
Niggers!